if your messages can be read by the government, that leads to sort of this Orwellian panopticon future potentially. And the same is true for transactions. If all your transactions can be monitored and potentially censored, that gives a ton of power to repressive regimes. So they wanted to create a digital form of cash. Rather than lobbying governments or trying to get the right politicians elected, the mantra they used was Cypherpunks write code, and that's what they did.
In today's video, we dive deep into the riveting backstory behind Bitcoin's creation, an origin that began long before Satoshi Nakamoto's famous white paper. What trials and errors laid the groundwork for digital cash that could outmaneuver surveillance and repression? Who were the visionaries that built the stepping stones to Bitcoin? And what lessons did they learn along the way? Stay tuned as we trace the journey from early attempts like eGold and B-Money to the revolutionary ethos of cypherpunks. You'll discover how Satoshi pieced together breakthroughs in public key cryptography, proof of work, and Merkle trees to create the first unstoppable digital currency. What did it take for Bitcoin to rise when others fell? And how did it come to embody a new hope for economic freedom in an age of increasing regulation and oversight? The answer may surprise you. But before we do that, I want to introduce our sponsors, Stampseed, the Orange Pill app, and Swan. Our partners are businesses and people that we respect, and our products that we at Bit Intelligence personally use. You're watching 21 Voices.
So the Genesis book is, I like to see it as the origin story of Bitcoin. So it's the prehistory of Bitcoin. So the book ends where Bitcoin begins, essentially. But in a way, it explains Bitcoin itself. So it dives into the history of the people and the projects that preceded Bitcoin, and that develops these ideas about creating an alternative form of money or a digital cash for the internet. So Bitcoin did not come out of nowhere. It's still sort of this myth around Satoshi sort of, descending from the heavens and dropping Bitcoin on Earth. And I argue that's not what happens. For decades before Bitcoin, people were thinking about creating something like Bitcoin, a digital cash for the internet. And you can really see that different projects that preceded Bitcoin sort of iterated the innovation, and step by step, it came closer to Bitcoin. So yeah, the book, it has a economics part and a technical part. And throughout the book, these two storylines sort of get weaved together and ultimately leads to Bitcoin. So I start the book off with this story about Douglas Jackson and eGold because it sort of tells the story of what happens when you try to create an alternative form of money to compete with fiat currencies. In Douglas Jackson's case, he was indicted and he in the end ended up in home arrest with like an ankle brace. So and his company was basically shut down, and like it was just hammered. And the reason that could happen was because eGold was a central party. So it was a company. Douglas Jackson held gold in vaults that were owned by that company. And so the authorities could come in and just shut the whole thing down. Shortly after this was shut down, Bitcoin was introduced. And Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto, he kind of created the solution for the problem that Douglas Jackson faced. He created a decentralized form of money that authorities could not shut down. So the only way to create an alternative form of money is to make sure that it can't be e-golded, it can't be shut down in a way. And then Bitcoin is a technology that can't be stopped. And the book explains where this idea came from and how it sort of works. So this goes through the cypherpunk history and the invention of like peer-to-peer networks and the invention of public key cryptography, and how all of these technologies were brought together by Satoshi to create a form of money that cannot be stopped. Satoshi sort of laid the puzzle together. Like the piece of the puzzle were in these other digital cash projects or even other cryptography projects, and Satoshi really sort of finally lays it together in 2008, 2009. Introduction. eGold was booming. By 2005, over 1 million accounts had been created on Douglas Jackson's innovative online payment system, which together were responsible for almost $2 billion worth of transactions per year. The fully backed digital tokens that eGold customers used to make all these transactions represented 3.8 metric tons of gold stored away in vaults across the world. As one of the first successfully operating implementations of electronic money, eGold had in less than 10 years grown to be the go-to digital currency on the internet. But Jackson was in for a rude awakening. Just before the year's end, in December 2005, the US Secret Service raided Jackson's company as well as his home in Melbourne, Florida. Books and records were taken from his office, while federal agents confiscated anything that appeared even mildly interesting to them. Besides legal documents and business contracts, this included his wife's address book, their kids' passports, and the credit cards laying around on the nightstand. At that same time, at an AT&T facility in Orlando, some 70 miles northwest, eGold servers were taken offline and all transaction records were seized. The Secret Service, assisted by the IRS and the FBI, believed that the payment processor had become a hotbed for criminals, who could create eGold accounts with little more than an email address, essentially anonymously. In a time when credit card fraud on the web was running rampant, Jackson's payment system would have worked like a magnet for scammers. Worse, law enforcement officials alleged that child pornographers were making use of eGold's relative anonymity, and perhaps terrorists did as well. Jackson was indicted and charged with money laundering and running an unlicensed money transmitter. Jackson never intended for eGold to be abused for illicit purposes, nor did he believe it was, on any serious scale. In fact, he contended that eGold had a better fraud detection system than any other payment processor out there, and was always more than willing to cooperate with law enforcement. eGold was also a founding member of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's Financial Coalition Against Child Pornography, and Jackson maintained that the data collected through this coalition indicated that eGold practically wasn't used for such purposes at all. Rather, as a successful and independently wealthy oncologist and veteran of the US Army Medical Corps, Jackson had in the 1990s taken an interest in monetary policy and its effects on the economy. He had found that modern currencies, dollars, pounds, yen, were no longer backed by anything and could therefore essentially be created out of thin air with the press of a button. As he dove into the topic, he eventually became convinced that this was distorting the economy in very bad ways. Jackson had therefore intended to offer an alternative.
Please bear with us for a quick message from our sponsors. These videos take a lot of time to make, and we've partnered with brands we trust like Stampseed and the Orange Pill app in order to get the funding we need to bring you these videos every week. Don't store your Bitcoin in cold storage without stamping your seed phrase on an indestructible titanium plate. Stampseed is fireproof, rust-proof, impact-proof, and easy to hide. It has no loose parts and will give you ultimate peace of mind that your Bitcoin is safe and sound for the long term. Click the link in the description below for 15% off your stamping kit. When I finally got Bitcoin, it hit me like a lightning bolt. It was the currency of the future, the only money that truly mattered. But there was a problem. I didn't know anyone else that thought like me. That is until I discovered the Orange Pill app. Suddenly, I was connected with a network of like-minded Bitcoin enthusiasts, right in my own city. The Orange Pill app is more than just a social network. It's a community of passionate individuals determined to change the world, one Satoshi at a time. This series is brought to you by Swan and created by Bit Intelligence. Remember to like this video and subscribe to both our channels for more videos like this every week. Thanks for watching.
5 main digital cash projects prior to Bitcoin that I detail in the book are eCash. This was invented in the 80s and launched in the 90s. This actually existed. And this was a way to do private transactions. It was meant for banks, like it wasn't unbacked. It was backed by fiat currency essentially, but it allowed people to make private transactions. Then the second one is proof of work, Hashcash actually. So, and that was invented by Adam Back and was supposed to be more of a postage system to counter spam, but it introduced sort of the idea of digital scarcity into the realm of cypherpunks and the people that were sort of thinking about digital cash. Then the next one is BitGold, which was Nick Szabo's semi-decentralized sort of proof of work based digital gold kind of idea. There's first B-Money, which is similar to BitGold. And then finally there's RPow, which was a project by Hal Finney, which also created a proof of work based currency system, which in his case again was centralized, but it was centralized in such a way that it was still trustless. So it could be shut down, but it could not be cheated on. You could not create currency without providing proof of work, for example. At that point, public key cryptography had unleashed a revolution in the field of cryptography, which had also led to, all kinds of other innovations, sort of the remailer systems and all kinds of tools that can provide privacy, anonymity for people on the internet. But until the 1990s, this really sort of existed in academia. It was sort of something that cryptographers discussed, but no one was really building it, no one was implementing it. And so the Cypherpunks, founded by Tim May and Eric Hughes and Chuck Gilmore as well, they decided that it was time to bring these tools, to actually realize these tools and distribute them as free and open source software. They started building this, and shortly after they were founded, the United States government also started to push back against the spread of cryptography. So then the cypherpunks became like a factor in the crypto wars of the 90s, sort of the radical factor. The cypherpunks were really sort of the activist branch of these crypto wars, so to say. And one of the goals they also had, besides offering tools like PGP or remailers, they also wanted to create a digital form of cash, because they believed, besides if your messages can be read by the government, that that leads to sort of this Orwellian panopticon future potentially. And the same is true for transactions. If all your transactions can be monitored and potentially censored, that gives a ton of power to repressive regimes. So they wanted to create a digital form of cash, so a way to pay each other, do economic activity while preserving your privacy. There's several important inventions that all sort of came together with Bitcoin. On a technical level, I would say, public key cryptography was a major one. In Bitcoin, that's how you make transactions, that's how you sign off on a transaction and make sure that everyone knows it's really the owner of the coins that's trying to spend it. Proof of work was a really big one, so part of Hashcash, and that's how, of course, in Bitcoin the consensus mechanism is actually realized, and also a way to bring new coins in circulation, so it solves two really important problems in one. Bitcoin relies a lot on sort of old timestamping technology. This is actually the most cited source in the white paper, and that's sort of how the blockchain works. So hashing one block into the next block, and that therefore making sure that the order can't be changed, and everyone can sort of check that in a compact way. So I would say these are three very important pieces of that puzzle. So the timestamping technology, to clarify that's basically Merkle's tree. So Ralph Merkle came up with that concept of sort of hashing data together in a way that it can't be changed. I would say public key cryptography, proof of work, and Merkle trees, that these are probably the three main technological parts of Bitcoin. Rather than sort of lobbying governments or trying to get the right politicians elected, they believed that it's something they just had to realize through technology. So the mantra they used was cypherpunks write code, and that's what they did. They created the software to guarantee privacy rather than asking sort of for permission or trying to get governments to agree that it's important. They just put it out there. They just put that technology, that software, that code out there, so people could take their privacy into their own hands. That's an important part of the cypherpunk ethos.
The story of Bitcoin is not one of sudden invention, but an intricate tapestry woven over decades. From e-gold's rise and downfall, suffocated by centralization, to the radical drive of cypherpunks who refused to ask for permission for what they were creating. Each chapter was built on the last and gives you an overarching summary of the innovations that led to Bitcoin. Satoshi Nakamoto's genius wasn't in inventing Bitcoin from scratch, but in perfecting a blueprint that could withstand any government crackdown, creating a peer-to-peer currency that simply could not be stopped. This is a tale of resilience, rebellion, and the relentless pursuit of freedom, like we describe in this next video, here. So don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this every week. Thanks for watching.